For Telesur, I'm Cody Weddle in Caracas. The extended truce in Gaza largely held on Thursday as negotiations between Israeli and Palestinian officials continued in Cairo. Meanwhile, an Israeli court banned an Israeli rights group from broadcasting the names of Gazan children killed by the attacks. In Gaza, a sense of normalcy slowly returned for uneasy Palestinians. Here's our Gaza correspondent, Noor Harazin.
An announcement of a new 5-day ceasefire brought comfort to the residents of the Gaza Strip. Despite the truce's shaky start with several Israeli air raids on northern and eastern Gaza, the Palestinian militants are holding fire, giving the chance for Palestinian political officials to negotiate on a long-term truce.
The Israeli side manipulated our words. Our demands were a game to them. That's why we couldn't reach a long-term truce, but the Palestinian delegation united and they demanded that Gaza be granted its rights. We felt no difference between the Palestinian factions. Hamas, Islamic Jihad and Fatah were all one.
Meanwhile, life returned to the coastal enclave's streets, with the Palestinian people managing to go grocery shopping, trying to stock up on as much food supplies as they can, fearing that their life will be dominated by truces and ceasefires.
Palestinians managed to cooperate during hard times over the past years, like the lack of fuel, 16 hours of electricity cut per day, and the siege. Now we fear that this operation will go on, and it will become part of daily life for us, with the truces every now and then.
However, the Palestinian people are showing steadfastness and strength. Despite all hardships Gaza has been through over the past 6 weeks, the homes of Omar al-Nimr and his bride Hiba Fayyad was destroyed by Israeli attacks during the month-long offensive, and like hundreds of thousands of other Palestinians, the two were forced to take shelter in schools of the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees. On the third day of a 72-hour ceasefire in Gaza, Omar and Hiba got married in a UN shelter in Gaza City.
Regardless of all the pain and suffering the Palestinian people went through, they insist to create happiness and hope. Noor Harazin, Telesur TV, Gaza.
Thanks again to Noor. U.S. President Barack Obama has announced that the U.S. will widen the bombing campaign targeting the Islamic State in Iraq. Meanwhile, the UN has declared Iraq as a state of emergency. Obama justifies the new measures as the only way to fight the extremist militant group.
We will continue airstrikes to protect our people and facilities in Iraq. We have increased the delivery of military assistance to Iraqi and Kurdish forces fighting ISIL on the front lines. And, perhaps most importantly, we are urging Iraqis to come together to turn the tide against ISIL, above all by seizing the enormous opportunity of forming a new, inclusive government under the leadership of Prime Minister-designate Abadi.
Iraqi Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki resigned from his post on Thursday. Maliki appeared on Iraqi television announcing his decision and giving his support to the newly appointed Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi. Maliki's resignation came after U.S. pressure for his removal, with U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry urging al-Maliki to step down to avoid a political crisis.
Regional issues, and security issues.
And now we go to Latin America, where the Colombian peace talks continue in Havana, Cuba. The two sides continue discussing a solution for the victims of the country's 50-year civil war. At a special national forum organized by the Colombian Congress, representatives of the victims of the war have offered their own proposals for a truce. The FARC guerrilla delegation to the peace talks has proposed creating a trust fund to compensate victims.
6 millones de víctimas, 6 millones.
The Argentinian Senate has passed a new law regulating the supply of food and goods in an attempt to avoid shortages and speculation. Chief Minister Jorge Capitanich says the measures will benefit multiple sectors of the Argentinian economy.
Pretendemos la creación de un fuero consumidor, la resolución rápida.
We are creating a legal framework for the consumer, for the quick and effective defense of consumer rights, guided by the views of an observatory to monitor price levels. The regulation is meant to avoid economic concentration. It's a win-win mechanism. We want all the actors involved in the economic chain to win. This will improve the conditions for development of the economies in all of Argentina's regions.
desarrollo armónico, equilibrado de todas las economías regionales.
Droughts in Central America are causing increasing concerns among Central American governments. Some calculations show that 10 million people are in danger of a food shortage. With the latest, here's our correspondent in Honduras, Gerardo Torres.
Small producers in Central America are living hard times with plant diseases like rust that has affected more than half of the coffee plantations, and an extended drought that destroyed corn and bean crops.
El cambio climático, que es para mí lo que une a estos dos problemas que usted me ha mencionado, tanto la roya como la sequía, es el cambio.
Climate change is what unites these two problems, rust and drought. One of the principal causes of climate change is the technology that we have been using and also the activities that have been promoted, like extensive cattle ranching and industrial farming that affects soils. Other things that contribute are the poisons and nitrate fertilizers.
Grandes promotores que afecta el cambio climático. El otro es toda la mecanización de suelos.
Central America since the 1960s has been applying the Green Revolution promoted by the United States, based on chemical fertilizers and insecticides, and now with the promotion of transgenic seeds. Alba Ochoa is part of the movement Pata de Chucho or Dog Paw that promotes organic agriculture in the region.
En ese sistema capitalista, siempre los grandes beneficiarios son las transnacionales.
In this capitalist system, the big beneficiaries have always been the transnational companies like Bayer, Syngenta, and Monsanto that curiously produce poisons and also have the control of the pharmaceutical corporation.
También tienen la línea farmacéutica.
According to the promoters of organic agriculture, there are ways to face the consequences of climate change and not only solve things by using more chemicals to produce crops and import, meanwhile, the basic grains from other countries.
Si nosotros empezamos a cubrir nuestros suelos con mayor vegetación, vamos a
If we start to cover our land with more vegetation, we are going to have more water gathered. But the problem is that the water is evaporating. If you pay attention, in our country we have a lot of rain, but because our land doesn't have the capacity to keep it, we have lost that water to erosion. That also drags the soil, takes it to the rivers and then the sea. If we had more forests, the land could retain humidity and we would not suffer the effects of this drought.
En erosión se va, además arrastra el suelo, se va a los ríos y de ahí al mar.
Small producers are making efforts to organize regional gatherings in the next weeks to find ways to solve problems like drought and rust, but more essentially to change the way agriculture has been promoted by the government for the last 50 years in Latin America. Gerardo Torres, Telesur, Central America.
Thank you, Gerardo. To the U.S. state of Missouri now, where across the world eyes are focused on the suburb of Ferguson. That's where we have seen an aggressive militarized police response to protesters challenging the fatal shooting of teenager Michael Brown. Police have used smoke bombs and tear gas to disperse crowds. Thursday afternoon, Missouri Governor Jay Nixon put a new department in charge of the security response. President Obama has also weighed in on the unfolding situation, calling for an open and transparent process to see that justice is done. Shelling continued in the pro-Russian separatist-held city of Donetsk overnight Wednesday into Thursday morning. Separatist news outlet Novorossiya reports that Ukrainian forces hit targets in the Lenitsky region of Donetsk and had struck regions to the east and southwest of the city in previous days. It comes after a UN-issued report showed the death toll in the region has doubled in the past 2 weeks. A Russian humanitarian aid convoy remains halted by Kiev. And we end with a cultural note tonight, heading to Argentina, where the Israeli-Argentinian musical composer Daniel Barenboim offered a free open-air concert in Buenos Aires. Thousands gathered to listen to the performance, which included his orchestra, made up of young musicians from across the Middle East, including both Israelis and Palestinians. Barenboim has taken a critical stance against Israeli actions in Palestine, most recently denouncing the attacks on the Gaza Strip and organizing a concert in Gaza in 2011. More on those and other stories at our website, telesurtv.net/English. For Telesur English, I'm Cody Waddle.